and welcome back from the break. Thank you for staying with us. So this is our last session of our event on state strategies for skills and lifelong learning systems. So we wanted to end by letting states know who's out there to help them. What does the expertise in the field look like? What opportunities exist to accelerate the work in your state? So at the NGA Center for Best Practices, part of what we get to do is curate a field for governor's offices. We get to meet folks, we get to learn about the work in a policy space, and then we get to say, hey, here's a handoff to an amazing expert partner that we know is doing some excellent work. It's certainly a team effort, as we heard on the first day. NGA itself cannot help states execute every level of this work. We know that it requires partnership and collaboration, which has certainly been a theme throughout this event. So I'm very excited now to hand over the floor to several different partners who have played a great role in helping NGA learn more about this field and have provided some great opportunities for states to engage and get technical assistance and support and expertise and research that can really guide their work. So it's going to be a round robin of experts, but we will have an opportunity for a couple questions right at the end of this session after we get through with some quick presentations. So if you have questions that jump out, please certainly drop your questions into the chat and we can direct those to the speakers during the Q&A portion. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot of ground to cover. So I'd first like to throw it over to a group that you've heard from as a part of this meeting, but let's hear a bit more about their technical assistance efforts and the work they're doing with states. I'd love to welcome my colleague, Emilie, from Credential Engine.
Great, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here with everyone and share a little bit more about the work that we're doing at Credential Engine. You heard my colleague Deb Everhart give an overview of how credential transparency supports a skills-based economy. And today I'm going to focus a little bit more about how we work with states to help them implement and utilize that technology that we've been talking about. So for those of you who didn't hear Deb's talk, I'll talk a little bit about who we are and what we do. And I think if you can throw the slides up, we'll start there. Not seeing them. There we go. And apologies if I'm on a delay, but at Credential Engine, we are working to solve three main challenges. First of all, we know that the credential marketplace is enormous. Almost 1 million credentials that represent millions and millions of unique skills, and that there are trillions of dollars spent on education and training in the United States, which means that it's really vital that we understand how all of those credentials connect together and what each of those credentials mean. And when we say credentials, we mean everything from a degree of all types, certificate, certification, badge, anything that somebody can earn or learn from. And we also know historically there has not been a common language or data infrastructure to describe or compare credentials, which means that students lose out on opportunities, employers and educators are speaking past each other, and policymakers don't know what education and training is best to support. So if you go to the next slide. Without getting too into the weeds, our solution rests on developing that data infrastructure to help solve some of those challenges. So we know that we are not the whole solution, but we are a piece of the puzzle, going back to the theme of collaboration and partnership. But we see ourselves as that sort of technical infrastructure to support a variety of goals that states have. And what that rests on is called linked open data, which allows information to be shared and connected and used across a variety of tools and initiatives and goals within states and also institutions and systems, anybody that touches credential data. It's the same way that when you search for a hotel in Salt Lake City, the reason that Expedia and Travelocity and Google all have the same information about the location and amenities and room size is because they use a common schema and linked open data. So that's what we're trying to bring to credential data. So we know that states and credential providers have a lot of information about their education and training offerings, but in most cases that information is in formats that don't allow for easy sharing, don't utilize the common language, and it's not machine readable or usable in applications. And so we work with states and others that have credential data to map their data to our common language, what we call the Credential Transparency Description Language, which is a dictionary of terms that describes rich information about credentials like costs and skills, duration, things like that, and also acts as sort of the grammar by which that dictionary can be used. And take that information and make it available for credential ready, which basically turns that data into linked open data to be used in a variety of tools and other initiatives. So if you go to the next slide, the use of the CTDL and linked open data ensures that each credential has a unique identifier, which means that that data can be used and reused across initiatives, projects, and products. It means that data can be linked and connected to other data sources and also connected within the registry to develop pathways. So for states, that might mean connecting registry data to other administrative data like labor market information. And it also ensures that it's comparable both within and across state lines. This sort of technical infrastructure helps states identify opportunities to improve data and provides a framework to do so consistently. So I know one thing that we've all been thinking about over the past 2 days is how to make skills data more easily accessible. So the work that we often do with states helps identify where there are gaps in skills data and help create a plan to add those details. If you go to the next slide. Deb showed you an infographic yesterday that really illustrates how credential transparency supports everyone in the ecosystem, from learners and workers to employers to policymakers. But for states specifically, credential transparency has the potential to support statewide goals, things that are important to policymakers and other state leaders, things like helping to support the state attainment goal, identifying and signaling quality credentials, improving equitable outcomes. One of the projects that I've been working on recently that's really exciting is in Florida, where we're working to support the governor's REACH office and meet their goals by incorporating registry data into their decision-making dashboards and other aspects of the REACH Act, which that whole act is designed to strengthen their workforce system. We have a lot of information on our website also about different things that states are doing. And I think we also included a policy brief that just came out in the resources that are part of this convening. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But on the next slide, you can see where this work is already taking place. So we're currently already doing work in 27 states and regions, and also across 2 regional consortia. And when we work with states, our goal is really not to duplicate efforts, but to use data that's already available and enhance it where possible. We work to determine what data already exists that we can easily use as a jumping off point, and also work with states to figure out which goals state leaders have, governor's offices have, that we can help support. And often, like I said, starting with a specific use case in mind can be really helpful. So supporting learning and employment records, supporting the development of equitable pathways and things like that. We find that this work is most effective when agencies and offices work together. So we often, in each of these states, identify leads in governor's offices, workforce agencies, higher education agencies, K-12 agencies. Anybody that touches credential data are people that we like to work with. Again, it's collaborative work and best done, most effectively done when people are working together. But ultimately, we work with states to help map their credential landscape support publishing to the registry, and most importantly, utilize that registry data to meet those state goals. And again, focus on making it as easy as possible for states to implement it in ways that's repeatable and enduring and can be used for any project or initiative going forward. Next slide. So I think you heard from Nick Moore earlier today about the work that they're doing in Alabama. So I won't go into much detail because he really does such a good job, obviously, speaking about all of the amazing things they're doing in the state. But it's a great illustration of how credential transparency can support skills-based hiring and lifelong learning, and also how we work with states. So as you probably heard, they are doing a lot of things to improve their skills-based economy to support the governor's goals, things like developing those learning and employment records, mapping skills between credentials and jobs, developing pathways, and all of that rests on utilizing the registry and the CTDL as a piece of that puzzle. And we've been working with them, again, to help them use the CTDL, map the data that they have, and find gaps in the data that they want to have, and publish that data to the registry. We've provided technical assistance as they developed their publishing workflows and minimum data policies, provided guidance to develop RFPs and legislation. And we also have developed a community of practice of all of those states you just saw on the map for states to learn from each other, hear what they're doing, and maybe even support a little bit of competitiveness across states. On the next slide, like I said, all states are different, so our workflow is different in every state that we partner with, but we broadly offer services to those states in ways that make sense for those states. So broadly speaking, that means often starting with discovery, so understanding the current data landscape and needs, then moving to implementation, providing the technical assistance for publishing, whichever methods are most effective or most useful for those states. And then working on the data use. How can the data support the goals within those states currently and in the future? And also, like I said, we have that community of practice of states that can share the work that they're working on and offer ideas and support to each other as well. If you go to the next slide, which I believe is my last, just again want to highlight that we work with states in a number of ways, often on full-scale implementations, but can also start with smaller slices of work. So again, really meeting states where they are and trying to make it as easy as possible to scale. And while we have sort of specific packages, those are also customizable, and we work with all of our partners to figure out the best and easiest ways to implement the work. Again, that's why we often start with discovery. And we've got links in this slide deck. So we've got a lot of information on our website about how we can support state goals. But I encourage you also to ask questions in the chat or reach out if you have any additional questions. And I think that's it. So I look forward to hearing from folks and engaging with folks in the chat, and I will pass it off to the next speaker.
Great, thank you so much, Emilie. It's really been great to have Credential Engine as a partner for the National Governors Association and learning from your in-depth work with states. So hopefully folks are going to throw some questions in the chat, but also would follow up on Emilie's encouragement to reach out directly to Credential Engine if their work fits with your needs for moving forward your state priorities. So next I have the awesome opportunity to throw the floor over to our partners for this meeting, Western Governors University. You've been hearing about some of the work that they've been doing over this two-day convening. So now I thought it would be great if they could focus in on the work that they're doing with states, some of their work on skills, a lot of their work that's driving through our partnership with them, the National Governors Association's considerations of some of these state opportunities. So I would love to throw it over now to my friends and colleagues, Darin and Kacey.
Thanks, Amanda. So I'm Kacey Thorne, Director of Skills Architecture with Western Governors University, and I'm joined today by my colleague, Darin Hobbs, who is the Director of Academic Records, Credentials, and Career with WGU. So would like to start chatting a little bit about why skills. Why are skills so important into the work that we are doing in driving forward skills-based hiring and education systems? What we've found through the work that we've done at Western Governors University, as well as some of the intersecting work with the Indiana Achievement Wallet, as well as the Open Skills Network, is that skills really allow for us to describe work in more granular, flexible ways that are necessary for us to be able to reduce the friction in connecting talent to opportunity. We have to be much clearer in terms of what is needed for particular work roles and how we can bridge the gap between making sure that we've got education and training programs that are going to support that and provide students with the skills and training and ways to validate and demonstrate that they've earned those skills. Skills are also important in the effort to helping us define and adapt both education and career pathways. So as an individual learner worker, if I am interested in a particular career, what are the skills that I need to develop to get there, and what are potential educational pathways that are available to me to help me build and develop those skills? It's also really important for us in connecting job descriptions, resumes, and educational credentials in a more transparent way to help facilitate skilling, reskilling, and upskilling of current workforce. So for current employers, really being detailed about the skills that are required for particular job roles so that they can have better mechanisms for skilling and reskilling their own internal talent. We can go to the next slide. So the work that we started at Western Governors University and have really started evolving through the Open Skills Network is creating a common language around skills to fulfill some of the things that we were discussing earlier. Skills can serve as a common language to bridge the gap between the learner, education systems, and employers. So the rich skills descriptor and the work that we've done here is really, the way that I describe it is a powerful little data package that includes the information about a skill, common keywords that are typically used in job descriptions to talk about that skill, and then contextualized statements of what the skill looks like in practice for a particular job role. The rich skill descriptor is a machine-readable, searchable data schema so that it allows for tagging to job descriptions, educational pathways, and really provides context behind skills to give users a common definition. It's also really powerful in facilitating interoperability within credentials, education and training, job profiles, and learner records. Through the work that we have done in the rich skills descriptor space with our project with our partners on the Indiana Achievement Wallet, we've realized that the full potential of the learner and employment record is actualized when there is skills data to support. It is powerful technology that is taken to the next level with skills information embedded to help drive some of the pathwaying insights that are so important for learners, employers, and education institutions alike. We can go to the next slide. So here's just an example by way of Western Governors University, as well as work through the Open Skills Network. We have created what is known as the Open Skills Management Tool, which is a open software technology. It is open source that allows for organizations to author their own rich skills descriptors so that they can describe the skills that they need for employment, that skills that are included in their education and training programs, in a machine-readable syntax that makes it very easy to be embedded into digital credentials and read through automated means. So this is just an example of what a skill or a rich skills descriptor looks like within the Open Skills Management Tool. We can go to the next slide. And this is a shot of the user interface that actually shows a rich skills descriptor within the Open Skills Management tool. As you can see, this is a particular skill that's related to infrastructure and component security. You can see that there is an associated skills statement that actually describes what the performance in this area for a particular job role looks like. And then the job roles that this is applicable to are added as metadata using BLS and ONET job codes that it's linked to. Any RSD can also be associated with particular industry or educational standards as supporting metadata. Keywords that are used to talk about this skill that are being used in current job descriptions. There's also a field to link any rich skills descriptor to real-time dynamic labor market insights. So anywhere that this rich skills descriptor is housed, the earner or the user of this RSD information can see how in demand is this skill at a local, regional, national level, what are earning potentials for someone with a job role that this skill is applicable to, and if it's a skill that I need to build, where might I seek education and training that can help me develop and validate that I have this skill. So all of this work has been critical to what we have been doing at Western Governors University in ensuring that our curriculum is aligned and hyper-focused on what industry needs, what employer needs, so that our students can have successful pathways to meaningful careers. It's also been instrumental in the work that we have done around the learning and employment record in terms of just taking it to the next level in its ability to reduce the friction in connecting talent to opportunity. So here I will go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Darin to dive in a little bit deeper.
Thank you so much, Kacey. So much of what you just said is reflective of what we showed yesterday in our demonstration of the Indiana Achievement Wallet. For example, the slide that I'm showing here is referencing those rich skills descriptors that were embedded and aligned to the credentials that were developed as we launched the Indiana Achievement Wallet. This is coming, as you can see here, out of the framework that was published by the OSMT, or Open Skills Management tool. And it was the power of using the RSDs aligned to market data that allowed us to surface to learners not only through the transparency of the credential, the vocabulary that they need to understand about the job role that they could be seeking, but also it's what allowed us to surface the market data such as job opportunities, all of the information that you saw yesterday. Without a doubt, skills are extraordinarily important as we move forward in this new ecosystem that is underway. But one of the things that I also want to point out is that we recognize that we need to meet everyone where they are. We need to be able to leverage what is already in use, what is available, and derive from what's already extant, the power that exists within those systems. For example, I'm showing here Credential Engine and their repository, as well as the IMS Global Case framework that has been developed. These can also be leveraged as a part of an LER Achievement Wallet ecosystem. In fact, in the Indiana Achievement Wallet today that I was showing the 3 credentials coming from Goodwill, WG will also be putting credentials into that wallet, as will Ivy Tech. Ivy Tech is using Credential Engine's repository to provide all of the rich data around their credentials that will be flowing into the wallet. We use the open standard of open badges because we're able to embed RSDs within that open data standard. We can also leverage the open data standard of CTDL, CTDL ASN through Credential Engine to pull in those Ivy Tech credentials. It's important that we leverage what already is going on within your state. If your education providers, other institutions are utilizing these types of data standards, we can absolutely pull those into an LER Achievement Wallet system to provide the meaningfulness behind credentials that are earned by your learner workers. For example, I want to show here, this is the Ivy Tech, AAS, and Medical Assisting as it exists within Credential Engine's repository. This kind of information is really important in displaying to the learner via the wallet the meaning behind their credential. And it's also open data on the web, so it can be looked up and studied and understood by the consumers of credentials. Here again is where the competency framework of the Ivy Tech credential is represented within Credential Engine's repository. It's meaningful if you look at this to see how the competency framework represented here is very similar to RSD's. But it's still a little bit different, and I believe that our work, Kacey, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe we're also looking at how the OSMT can interface with Credential Engine's repository so that competency frameworks or other mechanisms of descriptions used within a credential descriptions can be further enriched by OSDs. In fact, can be published straight into Credential Engine's repository with RSDs. Similarly, we're in conversations with IMS Global about how the same thing can happen with CASE. Here, for example, is what is found within the CASE framework, which is primarily used at this point for K through 12 in defining the criteria at the state level around their credentials. Again, all of this is extraordinarily meaningful. It is open data, it's linked data, and can be pulled into along with the credential that represents this information, can be pulled into the LER Achievement Wallet so that alignments can be made and credential transparency can be achieved. And I think the last point I'll make is just the importance of aligning credentials so that information can be serviced about workforce and market data.
I would agree, Darin, and just add to that what we've seen in the work with Indiana Achievement Wallet, whether you're using CASE, CTDL, whether you're using rich skills descriptors, it's not an either or, it's an all and system that's going to have maximum benefit. And you know, the credentials that we issued through, in our use case through Badger, written in open badges, also allows for flexibility of where those credentials and how they're being published and what's being used, the platform to do it. So
well said.
It is really important that the work that we do is predicated on open standards to allow for that flexibility and creating multiple entry points for any state, wherever they are. There's multiple ways to accomplish this work.
Absolutely.
So join us. We would be
please join us.
We would be happy to, you know, be thought partners, to share what we have learned, some of the wins and pitfalls, both in this space. So
we're here to help you take that first step.
Great, thank you both. I think you can probably all see my professional strategy, which is to surround myself with all very smart people, and by osmosis, then I look very smart. So I think you guys are helping me accomplish that today. And you can see why it's also a team sport, in that not everybody's going to be able to dive as deep as some of these other partners. And so knowing where that expertise lies is really going to help states know where to go and know where to bring their questions and know who's standing by to help them take those steps. So speaking of smart people who have a depth of expertise, I would love to hand the floor over to my friend and colleague, Jason from the U.S. Chamber Foundation, who's really going to bring the perspective of how employers are being connected to this work and are really driving some of these efforts at the foundation. Jason?
Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate the opportunity to join you all today. Just to make sure everybody understands who I'm representing today, there's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is the world's largest business federation. It represents a federation of over 1,500 state and local chambers of commerce across the country, as well as a network of American chambers of commerce globally. And then our combined membership is over 3 million firms, the majority of which are small to mid-sized enterprises, which make up the largest job creators. The organization I'm representing today is actually the foundation side of the house. It's our nonprofit affiliate, which has a social impact mission, and that is where our workforce portfolio is held and where we have launched all of our programming. So a convenient way to think about it is the U.S. Chamber is more hill-facing, whereas the Chamber Foundation is more field-facing. And that's where we engage directly with our federation and membership to really elevate the employer leadership role in a wide variety of education and workforce initiatives. So I'm going to share some of them with you today, which could be resources for you all as you advance towards a skills-based talent marketplace that can support lifelong learning. So if we could pull up the slides, I'd like to first highlight some of the challenges that are facing our workforce system. So should be nothing new here, should be preaching to the choir, but this is kind of how we think about the problems on the private sector side and what we're trying to tackle. And if there's one thing you take away from this slide, it's the first bullet, which is when we're talking about realizing a skills-based talent marketplace, please understand it is both a human problem as well as a technology problem. It's a both-and approach, because we could come up with all the fancy data tools we want, but if people aren't prepared to use them, and if they don't fit within neatly within existing workflow processes and address real world use cases, they're not going to get the kind of adoption and implementation that we seek. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we are facilitating all of the change management, which has to happen institutionally, at an organizational level. It has to happen culturally, but we need to disrupt a lot of these human workflow processes so we can better communicate and be better customers of skills when it comes to workforce development. And then once we have that change management in place, there's a lot of technology gaps that need to be solved for. And those technology gaps fall within the education side, within the business community itself, within the military, and other venues. But it's a human and a technology problem that needs to be addressed if we're going to achieve this vision of lifelong learning in a skills-based talent marketplace. Other things that we know that we're up against as we're moving into this brave new future is we continue to have the perennial challenge of employer engagement and leadership. We continue to recruit employers as advisors, but we're not reaching them at scale. And if we do get them involved and interested, it is incredibly difficult to keep them there. So how are we actually solving for that collective action problem here in the US, where we can engage employers at a grand scale and make sure that they are authentically leading a lot of these partnerships? We have to solve for that. Another big challenge we have is labor markets are becoming more dynamic, not less. And jobs and industries are going to be disrupted faster and faster. And more often than not, the labor market information on which we rely not only has gaps, but it struggles to keep up with sending those signals. Another issue we have is the half-life of skills, as well as skill obsolescence. We know that even getting education, training, or credentialing is not enough. You need to continue to upskill and reskill to remain competitive. We know that we not only need to engage employers, but they need to actually be leading the process. What does that mean? That's more than rhetoric. We need to make sure that there are supports in place to activate employer leadership and help them facilitate decision-making in these partnerships in ways that's more agile, and getting education and training partners to react more quickly as jobs and industries shift and change. Another issue we have, which you heard a lot about, is the inability to document and share skills. We talk a lot about skills and competencies, but how you actually turn them into a practical, usable set of tools that individuals can make use of is challenging and requires a lot of change within our ecosystem. We're also not documenting where skills are being attained in many settings where learning is happening, including on the job. And last but not least, we know there's a lack of financing options for how you actually develop skills and achieve lifelong learning. Incentives and markets matter. In the way the current incentive structure is built, it's not necessarily user-friendly in terms of promoting predominantly older workers with being able to quickly finance and access reskilling and upskilling opportunities in a way that's more affordable and doesn't burden them with more debt. If we go to the next slide. So how we approach it at the U.S. Chamber Foundation is through agility. We think the workforce systems that will be competitive in the future need to be agile, and that agility cuts across three different domains. You need agile partnerships that are authentically employer-led and responsive to changing employer needs. You need agile data, which means you need better, faster, clearer data and signaling around in-demand skills, not only from employers, but also for learners and workers to be able to communicate their skills out as data that can fit within these workflow processes. And you need agile investment. We need more public-private financing instruments for how learners and workers are able to access more affordable skills-based training and to do it on a lifelong basis. But you need agility across all three of these domains if you're going to have a competitive workforce system. So if we go to the next slide, what I'm going to share with you now is a few programs that we operate at the Chamber Foundation that could be a resource to you. In terms of agile partnerships, our most well-known initiative is our Talent Pipeline Management Initiative. This is our supply chain approach for how you source and develop talent. It's built based on industry best practices. their own best practices for how you build a value chain, creating shared value and accountability. This is a system that is used to actually create better alignment with employer demands by getting employers to use a framework to better engage in collective action and decision making, generate their own primary workforce data, analyze their own talent supply and their effective utilization rate of those talent providers, and to then go and actually co-develop or co-design a talent supply chain with a network of preferred education, training, and credentialing providers. But we built this playbook. It's by business for business, and it was really designed to address that employer collective action problem. This is our way of solving for that, and how we think about it is that this is important, and it's different than a lot of the ways we've thought about engaging employers in the past. It's not only built on industry best practices, but it's laser focused on employer return on investment. That's what gets them to engage from the beginning, and it's authentically employer-led. It's not something doing on behalf of employers. It is employers coming together through collective action, using a framework to exercise leadership and to make decisions as a team and to really own the talent pipeline that they're developing. This framework provides a structured and agile process for how employers produce primary source data about their core workforce needs, and then how they share that data with preferred education and training partners. What it also allows you to do is engage the full spectrum of talent sourcing partners. We are agnostic in terms of where employers get their talent from, but we encourage them to look broadly at all the potential sources of talent and providers who can give them services and wraparound services to make their talent supply chain work. And we think this is the way to create shared value, competitiveness, and accountability across the partnership. Employers then have skin in the game. They are end customers of that talent supply chain, not advisors to a system. It's their talent pipeline. It's their ROI that we're basing this on. If we go to the next slide, this shows you an example of what the framework looks like. It's a 6-strategy process that we teach through our academy. We have trained well over 500 organizations on this framework. We have thousands of participating employers, and we have high-performing talent supply chains operating in 38 states and Canada and growing. To give an example of what it looks like, we trained up the Phoenix Chamber of Commerce. They launched 4 employer collaboratives involving over 100 companies across healthcare, financial services, construction, and cybersecurity. And now those companies pay dues to the Phoenix Chamber to sustain talent supply chains as a service because they're benefiting so much from that. And while I play up the employer ROI, the real winners are the learners and workers who are now benefiting from those authentically developed talent pipelines where jobs are waiting for them at the end of the day. Another example that we have is the state of Kentucky. When they learned the talent supply chain system through the Kentucky State Chamber and did a demonstration project in Louisville in healthcare, they had such a good experience. They then went back and now have launched over 30 employer collaboratives statewide involving hundreds of companies across every priority industry sector in that state. They flipped their workforce system in less than 2 years and made it authentically employer-led. One important thing I want to point out about this system is what's important is we focus on changing it's change management inside companies themselves. So we get them to think differently, not only how they're producing job projections, but also how they're organizing their hiring requirements. And we teach them how to clean up the job descriptions and postings, make them more skill-based, eliminate conscious and unconscious bias that might be in there, but they're improving the quality of the data about the job and removing barriers before they're structuring it and sharing it out as data. So this is part of that human dimension. This is change management, changing practice and culture. We do it through talent supply chain management. If you go to the next slide, I wanted to share with you just a couple other initiatives we're doing on the data front. One is the Jobs and Employment Data Exchange, JEDX. This is an effort we have underway. We'll be piloting it with 4 to 6 states that we'll be announcing next month. But we're working with partners to explore how to engage employers in implementing data standards for jobs and employment outcomes. So we think through this unique infrastructure, we are going to be able to create the next generation of data about what's inside of a job, but also better information about the employment outcomes for the incumbent workers in those jobs. And if we do this right, it could revolutionize how employers create comprehensive jobs and employment records to share with government agencies to satisfy data queries like UI wage records. But we can enhance, improve, and structure the data directly in the HR systems themselves, and then make that a more valuable data resource for government. But it could also generate a whole new generation of employment analytics and be the infrastructure by which we link data to individuals about their employment history that they could use when applying for government benefits and entitlements. Another initiative we have is our T3 Innovation Network, which is supporting the digital transformation of the talent marketplace. So beyond just employer signaling, we're bringing together the private sector, education and training providers, the military, public agencies, and others to talk about what's the data infrastructure we need to make all learning count and to render that learning as data that's shareable, to make competencies and skills like currency, and as currency to render it as data that can not only be transacted but translated. And how are we then using technology to link data to individuals to empower them with their data so they can pursue education and training opportunities. This is a network of over 1,000 professionals who are coming together to be part of this digital transformation and to address gaps in the data ecosystem to unlock data interoperability to make this possible. And if we go to my last slide, I wanted to just finish with our talent finance initiative because how you pay for all this matters. So if you want to create a marketplace of skills and lifelong learning, you need to come up with a new public-private approach for how you finance and invest in those opportunities where employers have tremendous skin in the game. So we launched this initiative. I don't have enough time to go into a lot of detail, but if you're trying to rethink and reimagine how you're deploying new investment tools to make it easier and more affordable for individuals to access training and upskilling opportunities, we've launched a whole national network around that effort, and we'd be delighted to share it with you. I do have one more slide, which just kind of tees up the questions for where an organization like the Chamber Foundation might be helpful to you. If you're trying to engage employers in a scalable and a sustainable way and move them more into an end customer role, we can work with you on that. If you're trying to develop more robust, higher quality data about jobs, skills, and employment outcomes, that's another area that we can help you with. If you believe that all learning should count regardless of where it happens and you want to empower your citizens with data about their employment history as well as their learning history, we have a whole network for that. And if you're looking at designing new public and private finance and investment instruments, we can help you there as well. So lots of different ways of tackling this, but I encourage you to think about this as an agility problem. You need to have agility across partnerships, data, and finance. And we have a variety of tools, resources, and partners that can help you achieve that level of agility. So thank you, Amanda. I appreciate the opportunity to present today.
Great, thank you so much for joining us, Jason. It seems almost cruel to limit Jason to only 10 minutes to talk about all of the work that's happening at the Chamber Foundation. I know we at NGA are exploring opportunities to engage and collaborate across many of these efforts so we can make that clear connection that governors are always looking for to their industry partners and to employers within their state. So thank you so much, Jason. So switching gears a little bit, I want to bring you to somebody that you heard from yesterday, and that is Kathleen from Education Design Lab, who is working with institutions to help accelerate some of this work. So I'd love to turn it over to you, Kathleen, to share a little bit more about the work of the lab.
So sorry, I got halfway through my talk and before I realized I was on mute. Thank you very much. So thanks, Amanda, for having us. So I'm Kathleen deLaski from the Education Design Lab. Yesterday, I did a talk. I was asked to do a talk about the micro credentials as sort of the silver bullet to a visible skills-based ecosystem. And today I'm going to zero in on how the lab can help you get there. So the Education Design Lab is a national nonprofit that really approaches the skills-based economy evolution and helping us all try to get there from really the learner and earners perspective, and particularly the sort of 50% of your state's populations that might need more help getting to a shift in either their career, a training to maximize and unlock the potential. And those are the folks that, you know, as somebody said yesterday, we want to be careful that we're not just helping to skill the skilled, because the promise of the skills-based economy is really that it is an equalizer, and it also creates a more efficient, you know, supply and demand set of translation tools. So if you go to my first slide, this is the one I showed at the end yesterday. And I wanted to come back to it to really, trying to think about it from your point of view, because you're hearing from all of us and you're hearing all these cool initiatives, and how do you think about, what's in it for me, or how do I tap into this? And what we hear from states that we work with is that you're all in different places, right? And you have different opportunities that you're trying to use as your entry point. So we've tried to kind of lay it into 6 steps, and then we're not necessarily, as you hear from everybody else talking, the lab is not necessarily the group to help you in all of these, right? Certainly, when we work with folks, we start with prioritizing statewide skills demand, but you're going to have your sets of data and your initiatives to figure that out. And you hopefully will be thinking about skills taxonomy for micro-credentials, which we see as sort of it becomes your currency and your underpinning to organize the skills that you need and the skills that people have, and to create an open and transparent, really currency system. And there'll be several folks that can help you do that. We can help you do that. We actually have created a set of micro credentials for 21st century skills that are getting used in more and more states, because that was an area that was so under credentialed, if you will, and yet it is the area that employers often care most about. And as far as competency maps, there's lots of, you heard from Alabama, you'll hear from a lot of other folks that are doing different initiatives there. I'm sorry, could you bring that slide back up? Because I wanted to get to the particularly the 5th and 6th pieces of this. This is where the Education Design Lab is really working we're in 9 states now, working particularly to establish this fast track mechanism to get learners into employer validated pathways in less than a year. So if you see some opportunities, if you want to like capture some momentum, and you've got emerging fields, or you want to have emerging fields, and you're like, how do we get our community colleges, our technical colleges, our universities, our boot camps, how do we get them aligned around a set of industries or roles that we want to become leaders in? How do we do that? That's where I think the lab is particularly specializing. So on the next slide, Chris Lowry from Ivy Tech, he talked about how micro pathways were the entry point for them to think about how to organize their route to creating more talent pipeline in the industries that were showing the most promise for their state. And we really have made a bet at the Education Design Lab on community colleges as your best opportunity to have a partner that can really has their ear to the ground. They're already focused on training and development, and they have the trust of the, as I mentioned, the part of the population, what we call new majority learners, that most need the support and guidance to really access and make use of the skills-based economy. So we have created the Community College Growth Engine Fund to really create design channels within community college systems, but really them as, think of the hub of the spokes, working with all of the state agencies, the employer groups, such as a Chamber of Commerce group. We're working with Credential Engine in a number of the states, and a lot of other of the players. And the short-term goal for the Community College Growth Engine Fund in the states that we're in is really to create a set of shorter-term credentials that are role-specific, right? That are less than a degree, but more than the individual certificates and certifications that we have learned from, our research, everybody's research, are serving learners and earners, but they're not actually propelling them into lifelong education. And really, they can be cul-de-sacs, right? So we have created a set of credentials, and I'll tell you what kind of the criteria for these credentials are in a minute, but they're really beginning to take off. We're in these 6 states for year 1, and these are 1-year design sprints, really, with longer tail for evaluation. But we're about to enter 6 more states. We're going to announce in January, and some additional interesting kinds of partnerships. And on the next slide, you'll see these are 30 pathways that we have piloted this year in 2021 during, and my hats off and all of our hats off to the colleges like Ivy Tech. When Chris explained yesterday, they've done this at the height of COVID, and it's amazing the kind of progress they've made. But this is such a key focus for community colleges who actually see that they need to pivot. In many cases, in many of the colleges, right, they're losing enrollment, but they serve such an important purpose. They just need to sort of turn the ship to serve more of these short-term credential seekers, because that's where a lot of the demand from their learners, that's where they're seeing it. And so these are the first. This is the first group of role-specific micro pathways, many of which I think is interesting are first time. It's the first time that the college is creating a pathway with to earn this credential. And on the next slide, I'll just give you a quick example. For Seattle, we're working with all the colleges in Seattle, the community colleges, and this is an example of how they are presenting these offerings to adult learners. Many times, it's their first real foray into adult learner marketing, and so we're working as a community of practice on how to do that to compete with boot camps and this sort of thing. But it's going quite well. Early returns are that we're getting a lot of enrollment, and particularly enrollment of learners of color. Next slide. I want to show you an example of one of these micro pathways. So this is one of Ivy Tech's. So their state plan. I showed you that first thing on the to-do list is really to work on where is your demand, or where do you want to build centers of excellence as employers, and your talent pipeline. And certainly advanced manufacturing in Indiana is one of them. So this is a brand new credential that never existed before, and we have several inputs into it. But one of the criteria is it has to be less than a year. And it has to continue on to a degree if the learner desires. So the next slide shows that, where you have the micro pathway, but on the next slide you can see that the optionality for the earner is also demonstrated, and so that they can see visibly, like, what are the salary levels I can hope to aspire to if I go on to degree, or if I want to jump on and off. So it's sort of, we call it like a subway map. They can see what their on ramps and off ramps will look like, and these are all getting constructed by the colleges in this model. And I should also mention that the reach with the partners has been really great. The next slide kind of shows when we're building out so many of these now. We have 100 pilots in that are all often connected around the country, that are where the learning communities are learning from each other. Some are rural. We have single moms cohorts of colleges working on single moms, and so it's been really helpful to introduce these groups to each other. We're also working with the OSN pilots and Credential Engine and several other groups to try to connect the dots on all of these kind of projects. So that's another thing that we like to bring, is that we bring a network where we can pull together different pieces of the things that are going on, and we bring employers to the table in particular, which the colleges really appreciate. Often it's their employers, but we're engaging them in a new way around a very specific pilot or model. And the example there that I'll give on the next slide is that we're using a tool that the employers really seem to like. That's it's called the T profiler, but it's this idea that when you say a role like the digital smart manufacturing engineer, we bring the employers together with the college and with learners too, to ask what are the skill sets, what are the 21st century skill sets you need for this role, and what are the technical skill sets. And that's how we focus the competency map and the skill map that then creates the micro pathway. So the next slide, I said I would mention the criteria. So this is how we're helping to scale these across. So we now have we'll have about 20 colleges altogether very soon, and they're all using these criteria for designing the micro pathways. So we're trying to build a shared language across states. So that's why we'd love to work with some more, even if you're just looking at the best practices and you're going your own way to create micro pathways. I won't read through all of these, but one that might not jump out is the 21st century skill. So when we're moving to this just-in-time technical training style of skills, the skills-based economy, the one thing we all worry about, right, or one of the things we all worry about, is what happens to the liberal arts education where you're just becoming a smarter, better citizen of the world. Are you going to continue to learn those things which actually help you get your fifth job, but maybe not your first job, the philosophy major or something like that? So we're trying to kind of wedge these into these short pathways to make sure that people are still getting them. And, somebody said, oh, you mean you're going to try to save gen ed? And I guess you could say that's right, but we're skillifying it, right? We're turning it into a skills-based piece of the puzzle. So we hope that is music to people's ears, because it does seem the employers love it. Okay, so my last slide is to go here, just to kind of like Jason did, just kind of summarize, where the lab can help you, because it must be confusing to be hearing from all of us and say, well, can't you guys just get together and give me one consultant, right? And the thing is, there's a lot of pieces to this, and we do work together. And as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, well, wow, we need to work together even more, because I'm hearing such great synergy. But we really feel like we can, part of our role is to organize your stakeholders into a structured design process, and to get fast proof points. That's kind of what we're known for, particularly, that involve learners, that involve colleges, that involve communities and employers. And then the second is really to support and organize a pipeline strategy, if that's help that you need, with your key industries and employers. Because sometimes you have, it's almost like you need to herd the cats and you're trying to figure out what to do with them to get to some action. And the third is really supporting your community college systems. We're doing this in several states already. We'll be announcing a few more, but this is a piece that we feel really passionate about, that this is the 2.0 role for community colleges to really help be your regional talent hubs, to almost broker the skills-based economy for you and with you. And so with that, I will say thank you very much. And go to my last slide, because it has my contact information, besides saying thank you. You can reach me at deLaski@eddesignlab.org. Thanks very much. Over back to you, Amanda.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathleen. It's really great to jump back and forth from some of the experts who are working in different spaces in this work, working with employers, working with institutions, and what that work looks like. Again, why we have to have a variety of expertise that comes to the table to help us manage the ecosystem around this work. So speaking of somebody with a 30,000-foot view, but also some boots on the ground, I would like to throw the floor over to a colleague who gets to be here with me in person. So I get the pleasure of his company directly. And you heard from him yesterday, and you'll hear a little bit more specifically about his organization's work. I'd like to turn it over to Rick from National Student Clearinghouse.
Amanda, thank you so much, and greetings, everyone. So I'm Rick Torres, CEO and President of the National Student Clearinghouse. And for most of you, you may wonder, well, what is the National Student Clearinghouse? We are a nonprofit, data platform as a service technology organization that was established 28 years ago by the higher education academic community to help them with some pretty severe data-related issues. And here we are, 28 years later, involved in one of the most ambitious efforts of bringing our vision of democratization of data and application of platforms to the benefit of learners and institutions to help make for a better society underway. And I'm going to be spending some time talking a little bit about our mission and our contributions to this space. So yesterday, during our presentation, there was a question that was raised around privacy and confidentiality. Well, it might be surprising for all of you to learn that the National Student Clearinghouse, over its 28 years and today, has a current data sharing relationship with schools that enroll 98% of the post-secondary enrollment in this country, and that's at every level, both public and private. We also have relationships with high schools, with diploma information covering 19,000 high schools. And we already have, and we work with 100% of the states, including the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, with research and data sharing relationships. So each of those relationships are governed by privacy and confidentiality principles that are contracted. So the good news here is that we have access to trusted, verified information with a track record of multi-state sharing, of multi-state data transfer, and of research that we can bring to bear to serve the needs of the nation and scale. So if you're at the state, my guess is that there is someone in your office that is already working with the National Student Clearinghouse. If you're at the district level, I can guarantee you that someone is working with us. If you're at the Board of Regents, there is more than likely somebody working with us as well. So this is an area where we can support any questions you might have about mobility, privacy, and confidentiality related to the work that's going on with all of this great discussion we've been having over the last couple of days. So as I mentioned, one of the ultimate manifestations of our mission is the enablement of the Indiana Achievement Wallet. And this is being powered by the MyHub Skills Wallet platform with our strategic partner, IQ4. We have worked together and listened carefully over the last 5 to 7 years in different sectors to understand the needs of the different users of the platform. And IBM has also partnered with us with the Learner Credential Network infrastructure. So this is part of the underlying infrastructure that's enabling the great work of the Indiana Achievement Wallet. So let's talk a little bit about what the platform itself is enabling. So the first piece is that it is enabling lifelong learners to reflect their credentials, and also it supports and underpins a progressive school and workforce-based skill attainment and growth pathway. And you say, what does that mean? That means that you can learn a skill in high school and continue progressively to grow that skill through work, going back to school, going to another job, and not lose any of that insight because it is verified, it's in a wallet, and you're able to move that forward. So it's not only for a traditional learner, but for a worker that wants to upskill, or for a person that wants to learn a new skill and move forward. So this is enabling, it is highly flexible, enabling all different types of workers to be able to take advantage of the platform. Secondly, it is designed to work with an extended group of community of care and counselors. You heard a lot yesterday about how Goodwill and Skillful are working in the Indiana Achievement Wallet, right, to help enable adult learners to move ahead. And we have applications inside that really help inform what skills, where are the skill gaps. And a lot of the work that you heard about earlier today around rich skill descriptors and all of this effort actually helps inform the definition of those skill gaps and then where you can go get the education. But when you think about platform extensibility, this can also apply to an extended network of community of care and counselors. So think of high school counselors that work, or think of college and career placement counselors, or expanded networks of helpers that are everywhere in different states. I heard this morning Alabama discussing some of its broader network of care that is supporting some of its workers to obtain, new skills and jobs. This is all designed to support that extensibility, and there is something in here for you. Thirdly, colleges and schools. And this is a really, really important section because we are hearing a lot about all the different standards and platforms and areas where where there's a lot of effort to consolidate. And I think one of the important points that the Western Governor's colleagues made is to meet people where they are. So because of that, you need to design a platform that is extensible and flexible. So whether you're looking at a comprehensive learner record, or you're looking at the NICE framework in cyber, or OSN, you're starting to tap into the real skill descriptors and tying into Credential Engine or using ONET, whatever it is. The idea is that the platform itself needs to be able to adopt and utilize these standards as part of the data that really allows it to work and flourish. So this is really important. And we all know, and I can tell you for a fact that at the Clearinghouse, the work and relationship that we have with schools, we see a very large continuum of levels of enablement. Some schools are literally trying to work telepathically with us, and other ones are still working in a comma delimited fashion. So you have to meet people where they are and help them cross bridges right to more advanced platforms. And this is what this is designed to do. And then finally, when we start looking at the employment sector, this is about matching learners to geo-located jobs. And there's this cycle of learning that starts with skilling, goes to upskilling, can go to reskilling, and then new skilling. And the platform itself can customize and incorporate state, regional, local development verticals and roles. So this is about, if you have an economic development plan and you're doing it within a state, it's about identifying, as we heard this morning in Indiana and Alabama, the priorities. And then looking at those priorities, saying which are then the roles within those vertical priorities that matter the most, where there's the highest demand, and then being able to work with this larger community, which we'll talk about in a second, to help establish the pathways that are essential, right, and the connectivity that's essential, and the community of care that's essential to support these learners on their journey to this new vision of where they would like to go with their career. So underlying all of this is this real intent around being flexible and being able to support states and meeting them where they are. So finally, the MyHub Skills Wallet platform, is a platform that underlies the great work going on in Indiana with the Indiana Achievement Wallet. And our partners here, Western Governors University with IBM and IQ4, can be leveraged to discuss where you are today, what are your ambitions, what's your economic plan for the next 3 to 5 years, and then how can we help you get there, right? What are the things that need to be true, right? And I think this is really important because we can help you then bring this conversation to life and make it real within your state. Thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the MyHub Skills Wallet as it relates to the Indiana Achievement Wallet. And Amanda, back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rick. We have assembled a pretty great group of experts here who have pre-existing relationships in your states, already working deeply with maybe some of your partners, and provide a great opportunity to accelerate this work through strategic connection. So last but certainly not least, one of my favorite people, I'm excited to welcome my friend Karen from Workcred to share a bit about the work that they are doing and what their organization is and how it provides a connection point to folks like Rick and to NGA in understanding sort of the industry credential and certification part of this world. Karen?
Thank you, Amanda, and thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to follow all of my esteemed colleagues. I will have no slides. I figured you've had enough slides over the last 2 days, so we'll just try to make this more of a conversation. And let's start by telling you a little bit about what Workcred is for those of you who don't know. We were formed in 2014, so we're relatively new, and we are a nonprofit affiliate of the American National Standards Institute. Workcred's focus is to strengthen workforce quality by improving the credentialing system, ensuring its ongoing relevance, and preparing employers, workers, educators, and governments to use it effectively. And so that pretty much lines up with the things that others have spoken about today. We have 3 main areas in which we work: consulting, research, and educational and collaborative services. And I wanted to talk today a little bit about some of those different areas where we're involved in that might be relevant to the states. In particular, I wanted to start with resources that could be beneficial to you at the state level. We have produced a number of resources that have focused, as Amanda said, on things that deal with different types of credentials. How do you differ between a certification, a certificate, degrees, and licenses? And of course, we'll be adding to those, as Kathleen has talked about, micro pathways and other terms that we need to come up with some definitions of, but we need to understand that these different types of credentials have different purposes and for different audiences, and they lead to different outcomes. Not one is better than the other, but they are all different, and in many cases they are developed quite differently as well. So we have created several diagrams and graphics that are available on our website, which is www.workcred.org. We've also developed some videos that help you understand what these differences are. We'll be releasing a new video at the first of the year, if we're lucky, maybe the end of this year, on standards and the relationship between standards and personnel certifications and certificates. Many folks are surprised that there actually are national and international standards, especially for certifications that are recognized globally. We've also developed a document called Understanding Certifications. Certifications is a term that is used pretty much to describe everything these days, and it does have a very specific definition. And so Understanding Certifications provides that primer of what certifications are, how they can be used. And in collaboration with the George Washington Institute of Public Policy and the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce, we'll be releasing 5 more issue briefs that have specific focuses around certification, elements of certification. One is on career pathways, one on recertification, another on quality, one on labor market value, and then some recommendations on additional research that needs to be done around these areas. And then so there are all these resources, and those are all free and available to you at the state level. In addition, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of 3 areas where we can also provide some specific technical assistance. One is around state lists of credentials and analyzing different state credential lists to support the creation, that would be nice in the future, of a single list of quality credentials. We know we're not there yet. We know a lot of your different agencies have different criteria and different recognitions for credentials. In addition to state lists of credentials, and I wanted to talk about one area that we are in the process of working on a grant for, that we will be looking for 4 states to work with, and that has to do with looking at WIOA and specifically looking at outcomes by looking at a specific data set. So WIOA training provider and credential outcomes to evaluate which credentials best support workers in seeking reemployment and or higher wages. Workcred submitted a proposal focused on displaced and underemployed workers participating in WIOA, and we would like to examine the impact of demographics and outcomes. Specifically, we will be looking at 4 states to examine how state level implementation and policies have impacted outcomes, particularly access to training and credential choices. And there are several research questions that we'll be looking at to do that. So if you are a state that has been doing a lot of work around your WIOA system, we would love to hear from you and learn from you as well. In addition, following Rick, we're doing some work with the National Student Clearinghouse that I think could be very beneficial to states in the future. We know that we get great data, or at least we get data from higher education institutions. We do not get data from certification bodies very easily. They don't have to share their data with anyone. So we have been convening groups of certification bodies to educate them and to help them understand what the value is of sharing their data in a public format. This is data that would then be linked. So it would be individual data at the certification attainment level that would be linked with data at the National Student Clearinghouse on educational attainment that would then be linked with the US Census Bureau's data on aggregate wage information. And it would really give us, for the first time, some very good data about career pathways and the relationship between different types of credentials. Do people earn certifications first and then go on and earn a degree? Is it the opposite? What are the differences in wages? And what does that look like? So I think as we move forward to get more of these certification bodies to understand why they should share their data, that data would be very helpful for you at the state level as well. We've also been doing some work with embedding credentials into post-secondary education, specifically embedding certifications into associate's and bachelor's degree programs, and have come up with a framework to help institutions do that. While we know that a lot of community colleges have certifications embedded, I would be, as working with the certification bodies, I'd be the first to tell you not all certifications are equal. And there's research to show that if a poor lack of a quality certification is embedded, it actually does harm to the individual in terms of career outcomes and has some really negative outcomes based on race as well. So we need to be really careful about quality, and we have developed some documents as well to help institutions assess the quality of those certification providers so that they really have a better idea of what they're getting. And also to Kathleen's point about general education and liberal arts, I think the embedding certifications has real value. For example, there's a relatively new certification on the Certified Ethical Emerging Technologist, which is becoming more and more important to have ethics with the use of technology these days. And we can see how that can really align well with someone in philosophy, for example, or cybersecurity and music, as another example to bring those technical skills into fields that we need the breadth of the knowledge that the folks are earning, but we also need some specific technical skills as well to be successful in the labor market. And then finally, I just want to close on a topic that has been discussed over the last 2 days, that's learning and employment records. I wanted to bring your attention to an article that we did that was published in Issues in Science and Technology called Everything You've Ever Learned, and looking at the promising solution that LERs provide to the challenge of capturing and communicating skills of individual workers to employers, but also talking about how they need to be carefully designed to achieve more equitable and socially desirable outcomes, and some recommendations to ensure that we really focus on the issues of equity and make sure that these are something that are available to everyone and used by everyone, not necessarily just particular groups in our society. So I will stop there and turn it over to Amanda so we keep us all on time.
Amanda, and then we'll go to Marlene.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen. And I really love that you ended your presentation really bringing out the equity imperative that's embedded in this work, and the way that a move towards a skills-based economy helps us to realize those goals at the same time that we're trying to meet workforce needs, at the same time that we're trying to get people into even better wage jobs or help them explore their opportunities. We also want to make sure that those opportunities are for all. And that we're equitably serving our communities and our states. And I know governors are committed to this in their workforce and education priorities. So I'm excited to explore this, this platform of skills-based economy and learning and employment records and lifelong learning along with states, informed by the partners that you've heard from over the last 2 days. So I told you we'd have time for Q&A, but I lied. We don't have enough time left because I would not be able to get through all the things I want to ask to all the presenters before the end of this time. So I want to go ahead and start closing out the day just a minute or two early. But I will be turning over the floor for the closure of the meeting to my friend and colleague and true partner on this effort, Provost of Western Governors University, Marnie Baker-Stein. But before we jump over there, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the National Governors Association, to Western Governors University, to the experts and partners who have joined us over these last 2 days. We are excited to get involved in this work and to see what value add we can bring to this effort that's already ongoing. So jumping on the moving train, to jump onto that train analogy that we had started yesterday. But I just wanted to say this is a team sport. You've heard from some of the players over the last 2 days. We're excited to get on the field with all of you and to see how we can help. So with that being said, thank you again, and I will turn it over to my friend Marnie.
Thank you, Amanda. I want to send that thanks and gratitude right back to you, Amanda Winters, your staff, and the National Governors Association for really instigating and then providing us this time and space to have these critical discussions over the last couple of days. I'd also like to thank those of you who've spoken over the last 2 days for your engagement and for your incredible presentations, but most of all for the world-changing work that you are doing out there. It's just awe-inspiring. And finally, I'd like to just take a couple of seconds to thank the team at WGU. You are amazing in your commitment to solving big, wicked problems with style and grace. Just truly, truly continues to inspire me. The conversation over the last 2 days has been very close to my own heart. I've spent years working with learner populations across the country, in urban areas, in rural areas, in borderlands, and I've experienced learner workers who are talented and ambitious and incredibly skillful and stuck, with no windows into the job and career opportunities that are often right in front of them, and no ability for the employers who represent these opportunities to see them and value them. And this is the fallout of a series of education and workforce systems that were simply designed for another era, with tracks that don't connect to one another and where our most underserved and vulnerable are often left behind. Over the last 2 days, I've been filled with hope hearing about the work that's being done to fix these issues at the roots. I've been inspired by all of the conversations that we've been dipping into, from truly understanding skills as a new currency that helps us to create coherent pathways across a lifetime of education and work, to thoughts around what it's going to take from a technical infrastructure point of view to surface those achievements and related value to earners and learners and learners and earners across their life cycle, as well as sort of just a clarity around the kind of collaboration that it's going to take inside of states and across states to make all of this future that we've been imagining and this problem space that we've been thinking about solving, to really understand how we're going to move forward. So many of our issues today, workforce shortages, educational access, equity issues, even our epidemic of addiction, are rooted in the challenges that our society faces in providing every individual a pathway to opportunity. I encourage you, as you reflect on the last couple of days, to think about how you can work in your state and together across state lines to build the infrastructure for social and economic mobility that is sorely needed now and into the future. It's time to think differently. And what's more, as I hope we've all learned over the last 2 days, we cannot do this complex and critical work alone. We just cannot. This is something that only gets done together. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend.